President Obama's administration have held Repsol's hand every step of the way along Cuba's coast. Some critics have argued erroneously that we should ease sanctions against Cuba in order to protect ourselves from an oil spill. This is merely a backdoor attempt to ease sanctions on the Cuban regime, a state sponsor of terrorism, because the Departments of Commerce and Treasury have already granted licenses to U.S. companies in the event that we are threatened by an oil spill from Cuba. And further license agreements that would not prove beneficial to U.S. foreign policy interests. But the concerns go well beyond Repsol. Reports indicate that Malaysia's company Petronas, in cooperation with Russia's state-owned Gazprom, will be the next leaseholder to drill for oil in Cuban waters. These are the same companies that helped the Iranian regime develop its energy sector, and by doing so, gave Iran the financial resources to pursue its nuclear weapons program. These companies don't care about U.S. security concerns, nor our immediate environmental safety.
State-sponsored terrorism, which is directly responsible for acts of international terrorism, harbors fugitives from U.S. law, actively partners with other terrorist states such as Iran and Syria, and terrorist groups such as Hezbollah and FARC, just to name a few. This is a regime that does not have transparency. It doesn't have any accountability. It doesn't have the ability or the will, frankly, to either protect its people, its coastline, and much less the coastline of the United States of America. In Florida, Mr. Chairman, as you well know, we have 800 miles of beautiful beaches sitting right outside the window, more than $2.5 trillion in insured coastal property, and a $60 billion tourism industry, all of which are at stake here. And again, we're dealing with a regime that for decades, up to the 1980s, was actually asking for unilateral nuclear strikes against the United States. I don't think we should think that they're going to be too concerned about protecting all of that I just mentioned. Now, despite this, the administration, the U.S. administration, our administration, appears to be providing assistance, guidance, and advice even to Repsol on how to most quickly and efficiently channel dollars to the terrorist business partners of Repsol, the Cuban regime. So while preparing for disasters is certainly important, and prevention, obviously, though, is better. When Secretary Salazar went to Spain and met with Repsol, he should have, and he could have, strongly dissuaded that Spanish company from any drilling in Cuban waters. He did not. He made no real attempt to stop it. So even if this support may not technically violate the Trading with the Enemy Act, the TRSA, the Cuban Democracy Act, and Libertad, known as the Helms-Burton Act, the administration certainly is not acting consistently with the principles underlying those laws, which are meant to prevent a windfall to a terrorist regime that brutally oppresses its people and is a threat to our national security.
Right now, we know there will be no protection whatsoever from the Castro dictatorship. The Castro brothers will certainly have no concern with respect to the environmental integrity of Florida or the United States. We know what their dismal environmental record is in Cuba, and we need to make sure that we hold all parties accountable. As has already been stated, the Obama administration has made no effort whatsoever to dissuade this activity. In fact, by not dissuading them, they have encouraged the Castro dictatorship to move forward. So, since we're not going to do anything with respect to the Castro dictatorship, certainly in this administration, we need to make sure and ensure that all the parties that are collaborating with the regime are also held responsible and understand that they will be liable as well.
The Obama administration is not only aware that Spain's state-owned energy company Repsol has entered into an agreement with the Cuban regime to drill off Cuba's coast, and that a Chinese-built deep-water oil rig will be used for this project. The Department of Interior has been actively providing assistance, guidance, and technical advice to Repsol. This is inconsistent with numerous U.S. foreign policy and national security objectives our country has with regards to Cuba. Let me be perfectly clear. Offshore drilling by foreign companies in Cuba's territorial waters is incredibly dangerous to the state of Florida. And make no mistake, Cuba, through their Chinese allies, will find a way to engage in slant drilling that would tap oil from the intercontinental shelf. The assistance from the Department of Interior to Repsol will result in a financial windfall to the Cuban regime. You've heard other members address this.
Cuba is looking for a new sugar daddy with the collapse of the Soviet Union, although you see a resurgence of Russia under Putin's leadership. So as you see Iran extending their tentacles into this hemisphere, I think it's a great time to dust off the Monroe Doctrine.
Cool.